Socialism.
Socialism sucks.
Socialism.
Workers to power!
Socialism?
We are fighting to put more power in the hands of everyday working Americans.
Socialism. Before it became a dirty word, socialism was relatively popular in the United States. So what happened? Socialism can refer to a whole bunch of economic and political philosophies based around the idea that communities should either own or regulate the means of production. The means of production being the facilities and resources, from raw materials to tools and factories, used to create wealth. Principles of socialist societies had already been adopted in America by some religious communities like the Amish and Shakers in the early 19th century. Socialism was eventually championed by American labor activists in the late 19th century as part of a new political movement. That was largely thanks to German economists and writers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and their theories about class struggle in the wake of the Industrial Revolution. They applied socialist theory to a vision of communist society. The short version of their vision is, in rebellion against industrial injustice and labor exploitation, the working class should have a revolution, taking property and money away from wealthy, greedy business owners and sharing it with the entire community. The long version is, well, very long. But the point is, it caught on in America, sparking a long tradition of socialism and socialist thought. The first socialist to hold public office in the United States was elected as a city councilman in 1897. The first socialist to serve in Congress won in 1910. In 1912, Eugene Debs ran for president on the Socialist Party ticket and won 6% of the popular vote. As socialism gained popularity in the United States, it was also gaining popularity in Russia, which was still an empire. The Marxist Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, a radical socialist party, formed in 1898. In 1903, a faction called the Bolsheviks split off, founded by Vladimir Lenin and Alexander Bogdanov, who considered themselves leaders of Russia's revolutionary working class. By 1912, the Bolsheviks were their own party. There were a lot of parties in Russia over the next few years. In 1917, the Russian Empire collapsed. Emperor Nicholas II abdicated the throne, and by October, power was given to the Soviets, groups of grassroots workers' assemblies that identified as socialists and communists. By January 1918, Vladimir Lenin had seized control of the government. By November, World War I had ended, and back in America, workers began to strike, demanding the robust wages they enjoyed during the war economy. Also in 1919, a string of bombs targeted at high-ranking U.S. government officials and notable businessmen were discovered. Thus began the first Red Scare, a heightened fear that radicalism in the U.S. might lead to a violent revolution like in Russia and bring an end to democracy and American values. Paranoia surrounding the bombs and the strikes spurred Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer to coordinate a series of raids, targeting thousands of people he thought might be harboring dangerous ideas and who he suspected might be communists or anarchists. These would be known as the Palmer Raids. While fears of communism lingered, many citizens became wary of capitalism too, because in 1929, America had plummeted into a Great Depression. In the mid-1930s, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was both criticized and lauded for implementing socialist-leaning policies and programs to combat the economic crisis. Meanwhile, in Russia, Joseph Stalin had risen to power by 1928, advocating his own version of communism, combining some socialist economic policies with executions, deportations, a cult of personality, and totalitarianism. In the 1940s, the capitalist U.S. and the communist USSR maintained an alliance so they could defeat the Nazis. After World War II ended, President Harry Truman refocused his efforts on making sure the Soviet Union did not have too much influence abroad. Socialism became synonymous with the Soviets and their version of communism, which was seen as a direct threat to America's free market capitalist system. Worried again that a communist revolution could happen in the U.S., American leaders told the public, again, that they should be afraid of communism. And by the time Eisenhower was in office, Americans were pretty afraid of communism. Between 1950 and 1954, Wisconsin Senator Joe McCarthy, who was also afraid of communism, helped make Americans very afraid of communism by launching a series of highly publicized investigations into potential communist infiltration in the White House, the Treasury, the State Department, and even the Army. This second Red Scare shaped the attitudes of Americans towards communism and socialism for decades to follow. Attitudes that would prevail throughout the Cold War and after the Cold War.